Let's go back to 1932. A famine kills millions in Ukraine. Not because there wasn't enough food, but because the system to get it to people completely collapsed. Fast forward to today, and we're starting to see those same kinds of cracks in the system, only now it's on a global scale. In this explainer, we're going to break down the sources argument for why that incredibly complex web that feeds all 8 billion of us is starting to come apart at the seams.
Yeah, just let that sink in for a moment. This isn't some prediction about a far-off, distant future. This is about the here and now. The source is basically sounding the alarm that the stability we all just take for granted could be disappearing way faster than any of us think.
And there it is, the year. The source pinpoints 2026 as when this whole thing could really start to unravel. Now, that is a shockingly short timeline, so let's dig into exactly how they arrive at that date.
To really get what's going on, we first have to understand why this time is so different from food scares we've had in the past. It's not about one problem in one place anymore. We're talking about the entire global system being stressed to its absolute breaking point.
You see, in the past, if a terrible drought hit one of the world's bread baskets, it was bad for sure, but, a good harvest somewhere else could help balance things out. The argument from the source is that now we're facing a perfect storm. We've got climate change, wars, and economic crises all hitting the entire planet at the same time. There's no safety valve anymore.
And misnumber, this just says it all. We have about 74 days of global food reserves. That's it. That is our entire buffer. Our food system has been designed for maximum just-in-time efficiency, but in the process of making it so lean, we've stripped away all of its resilience, all of the shock absorbers.
So, what are these massive problems hitting us all at once? Well, the source material calls them 5 converging crises, almost like the 5 horsemen of a modern food apocalypse. Each one of these is bad enough on its own, but together, they create this terrifying feedback loop. First up, we've got climate chaos. For 10,000 years, agriculture had a relatively stable climate to depend on. Well, that's gone. Now, farmers are basically gambling against wild droughts, historic floods, and brutal heat waves every single season. Then there's horseman number 2, water scarcity. This one's pretty simple, but really scary. Agriculture uses 70% of all the fresh water on the planet. And those giant underground water sources, the aquifers we rely on, are being drained way faster than nature can refill them. When the water runs out, the food runs out, period. Horseman number 3 is the fertilizer crisis. Now, modern farming is completely hooked on synthetic fertilizers. And guess what you need to make them? A whole lot of natural gas. So, when there's an energy crisis, it immediately becomes a fertilizer crisis. Without it, the source says crop yields could just collapse by 40 to 50%. Our 4th horseman is geopolitical warfare. Food isn't just a commodity anymore. It's being used as a weapon. We're seeing countries deliberately cutting off trade, hoarding their own supplies, and banning exports to get a political edge. This directly threatens the billions of people who count on that imported food to survive. And finally, economic collapse. This is the crucial last piece. Because even if there's plenty of food on the shelves, if soaring inflation means farmers can't afford to grow it and you can't afford to buy it, it might as well not be there. You can actually have hunger spreading even when the warehouses are full. Okay, so we've got these 5 crises all hitting at once. But how does that actually turn into a global famine? Well, the source lays out a very specific chain reaction, a cascade of dominoes that takes us from a really bad situation to a catastrophic one. Let's walk through it. It starts with major harvest failures in several of the world's bread baskets all at once. That triggers widespread panic and prices spiral out of control. Then, governments, trying to protect their own people, do the one thing that guarantees a catastrophe. They ban exports. And that's the kill switch. Global trade grinds to a halt, and the very system that moves food around the world breaks down completely. Now, I know what you might be thinking. This all sounds pretty theoretical, kind of like a disaster movie plot. But the source material is very clear. The warning signs of this breakdown aren't in the future. They are happening right now, all around us. Just take a look. In Egypt, the government is already rationing bread. Pakistan is struggling with over 40% food inflation. In the Horn of Africa, 23 million people are facing starvation. The source points out these aren't just isolated incidents. They're symptoms of a global system that's already under extreme stress.
And this right here is a massive red flag. China has less than 20% of the world's population, but it's hoarded over half of the entire world's grain reserves. According to our source, that is not normal market activity. That's a nation strategically preparing for a crisis that it sees coming.
The UN's own numbers don't lie. The number of people facing severe hunger has absolutely skyrocketed. It went from 135 million in 2019 to 345 million today. That's a 155% jump in just 4 years. The trend is going almost straight up, and that's before the main cascade of failures has even really started. So, given all of this alarming data, the focus of the source material shifts from just identifying the problem to, well, preparing for it. What can any of us really do in the face of a potential systemic breakdown of this size? First, the source says we have to get rid of some really dangerous myths. The idea that it can't happen here completely ignores how fragile our supply chains are. The belief that the government will provide is a very risky bet in a widespread chaotic crisis. And the fantasy of just living off the land ignores the fact that millions of other people will have the exact same idea. So, what's the practical advice? The source lays out a few key principles. First, build a reserve of 3 to 6 months of food that you actually eat. Having that bit of normalcy can be a huge psychological boost. Second, and this is maybe even more critical, secure a reliable water source and a good filter. You can survive weeks without food, but only days without water. Beyond that, it's about skills. Learn to cook from scratch, preserve food, maybe grow a little yourself. But the most important investment, community. The source really emphasizes that building a strong local network of friends and neighbors is the ultimate preparation because no one gets through a crisis like this alone. Ultimately, we're left with this one question from the source. The argument is that the age of abundance is ending and a new age of scarcity is beginning. The patterns are clear. The timeline is short. The only real question left is whether we'll be ready.